We are ready.
All right, thank you. I call this June 16th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First, please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've got it, Laura.
Oh, good.
Ms. Lowe, will you call the roll?
Chairman Sema.
Here.
Mayor Ream.
Here.
Alderman Whitmire.
Here.
Mr. Bolazina.
I am here.
Mr. McKnight.
Here.
Mr. Malin Smith.
Muted. Where'd he go?
He's muted. He's here.
He's here. Ms. Munzel.
Here.
Dr. O'Mell.
Here.
And Mr. White.
Here.
I have Ms. Miller as absent. We have a quorum.
Right, thank you. I do note that tonight we have two new members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, although they've been members. We didn't have a meeting last month, but welcome to Mayor Ream and welcome to Alderman Whitmire. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks very much. I am very excited that Jeff took the role on the P&Z committee. He will do a great job. He's very thorough. And I think he'll be a great addition to this commission.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, first item is the approval of the minutes from our April 21st, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion
White?
to approve.
Motion by Mr. White. Do I have a second?
Chairman Zeman, I saw an error.
Okay, why don't we get it, let's get it on the table. We can cover that during discussion. I need a second.
Sorry.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman, or former Alderman Malin Smith. Sorry about that. Ms. Munsell?
Oh, sorry about that. Wrong order there, but
Sorry.
under the minutes on 3/17/21, it says Vice Chair Sema.
So I sent out a corrected version via
Oh, okay,
email.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
did you get
sorry
that?
about that. I probably did. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
sorry.
I just noticed that. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Mr. White pointed that out.
I'm too late. Okay, thanks.
Further discussion or amendments? All right, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion appears to carry unanimously. New business, item number 1, conditional use permit. A request has been made by James Redling Schaefer, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit for a residential driveway gate located at 1926 South Mason Road in the Suburban Estate Zoning District. Call for our presenter. Do I have a presenter tonight? Mr.
James
Schaefer?
James Redling Schaefer is on the line.
Oh, good.
Hi, James. Welcome.
Thank you.
Will you have a presentation for us this evening?
I had submitted a description of the gate as well as a drawing by my architect. I don't have much to share beyond that, but I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Right, that'll be just fine. Do I have any questions by the commission? Mr. McKnight.
Mr. Redling Schaefer, welcome. I'm not sure whether you're new to Town and Country, but welcome to Town and Country if you are. I guess you've moved if not. I wanted to ask one of the questions I had in the drawing, and I was just trying to make sure that the drawing was accurate. As I went by and looked in your property, it seems like the circular drive is closer than 25 feet from the road, but and I guess I'm just asking if the drawing is accurate in that way, then you'll be able to fit the gate and actually keep the 25-foot distance from the road to the gate without interrupting your driveway.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it looked closer than 25 feet to my naked eye as well. I've measured it, and we do have 25 feet in on both sides, and so the pillars that hold the gate will be right up against, on one side up against the circle, and then on the other side it's a straight shot back to the garage, as you've seen. So it's thankfully just at, or not just at, but there's 25 feet there. I think there's about 28 feet total, but it does look tighter to the naked eye.
And I just wanted to confirm the drawing was right. I was just looking as I drove by. I was like, that just looks really tight. But I guess you're saying there's plenty of room. So okay, that's good. Good.
Yep. Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Is there a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit with
Move to
conditions
approve.
as set forth in the staff report? All right. Move to
So that
approve.
would be with conditions A through F. Is that correct, Dr. Amell?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McKnight. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Whitmire.
Yes, sir. I was wondering, given that one of the things we're supposed to consider is the visual coherence of this gate to the adjacent neighborhoods, wondered, are there gates within, other gates on the street in this area that this will fit within, or how it fits in with the rest of the neighborhood?
That's a question for Mr. Redling Schaefer.
Sure. Yes, there's a gate roughly 100 to 150 feet immediately before mine of similar character. And as you can see in the drawing, my intent with this gate is to create something very visually appealing. It's a wood gate that satisfies the 50% see-through requirement. And then the stone will match the home, which also happens to match or be very similar to the home next door to mine. So I think it will be very visually appealing to the eye, cohesive with the neighbors. And then the reason for this gate is I have a 2-year-old child and a child actually coming tomorrow. And so to protect them from coming out onto the street. So yes, I think it will be cohesive to the current environment.
Mr. Chairman, I think if I'm correct, there's also a similar, not the same gate, but a similar type of build across the street up the road a little ways as well. So I think you find a couple of these along Mason.
Mr. Bolzino?
Yeah, I guess I'm not reading this. The first time I looked at this gate, maybe I didn't read it correctly on the picture. I see at the top that there's areas with uprights and then open space, but is it depicting that everything below that top half is a solid panel? Mr. Redling Schaefer? Sure,
yes. So 3/4 of the gate is more than 55% open. The top half that you described there. The bottom half is kind of a kick rail, if you will, so that if a ball were to roll up to it or whatnot, it would be able to stop. Or we have 2 red labs that it would protect them. But one of the calculations that I was requested to do by the personnel of Town and Country was a total gate open calculation. And as described on that shop drawing, over 55% of the gate is open to meet the Town and Country guidelines. So yes, the top half or the top 3/4 is open with bars, and then there's what I would describe as kind of a kick plate, if you will, on the bottom quarter.
Well, I guess getting back to Alderman Whitmire's comments, I don't recall seeing any other gates that have that amount of solid space.
Mr. Spencer,
I'm
any
not-
comment on that?
I'm not familiar. I don't know offhand whether they do or they don't. I just like the look of the gate, and then sought to meet the open space requirement. And so if that's something you guys would prefer to see differently, then I'd be happy to
Yeah,
entertain it.
well, we'll see what some of the other members' reaction is, but I know member Mylan Smith doesn't like gates, and I kind of agree to him to a large extent, but we allow gates, and to the extent that they're allowed, we allow them. But I think some of the reaction against gates has been, it starts to wall off people, and I understand they're for security purposes, and a lot of times they're necessary. But I think when we create more of a wall than a gate, the visual coherence may be an issue that I think this commission could consider.
Further discussion? Mr. Malin Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since Commissioner Bolazina referenced me, it might be helpful for me to provide some perspective, perhaps even to the more new members of the commission. But legislation was enacted 2 or 3 years ago restricting gates to 8 or 9 principal streets in town and prohibiting them on what we'll call non-major streets. It was a concern of the board at the time that gates were proliferating and that the idea of a gate served less purpose on a dead-end street, and particularly as you get closer to the end of the street and very little, if any, traffic passes that gate. And secondly, the gate does, at least to some, send an impression of exclusion or unwelcomeness. And so the ordinance was enacted to restrict streets or gates to principal streets. South Mason, of course, is a principal street. While the gate that's proposed here tonight apparently does conform to our open requirements, I would share Commissioner Bolazina's concern that it is unique to most gates in that it includes a closed or solid portion. And it's merely a preference on the part of me or me as an individual to have gates appearing to be much more open and visually inviting than to be walled off and solid. So there is a history here, but this gate does qualify on a major street. If the applicant would consider making it more open, I think for at least this commissioner, that would be preferable, but not something that I believe is substantiated by ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Malin Smith. Further discussion?
Well,
Mr. McKnight?
I would just make a correction. I had noted that there was a gate like this down the way, and as I'm actually reviewing it now, that gate down the way is similar throughout the whole gate, like it is on the top of his gate. So the difference would be that the bottom is sealed off, and the gates down Mason Road are all open throughout. So I'm kind of following along with the message from Dennis, from Mr. Bolazina, Commissioner Bolazina, and Commissioner Malin Smith. It is preferable in my mind as well that we would have a more open gate and not necessarily the closed off view of it all.
Mr. Bolazina?
and as was mentioned, we do have certain ordinances that apply to the technical aspects of the gate. But since this is a conditional use permit and it is, we decided to make these gates a conditional use permit just because of this kind of situation, that the commission wanted to take a look at it and have some opinion about the visual coherence. So to that extent, even though it's not a technical requirement, it certainly is a requirement for the conditional use permit for us to consider whether it's visually coherent with the neighborhood.
Mr. Redling Schaefer, do you have a reaction to this discussion? Would you like to review your gate, or you want us to go ahead with a vote?
Sure. No, I appreciate everybody's comments. And as I mentioned, what's of utmost importance to me is the safety of my children. And so if you all would like me to make the bottom half match the top half and take more of a bar and open space format, and that would provide approval today, then I'd be happy to make that change just to get this gate up and keep my children safe.
Okay, so it sounds like you'd be willing to make a change. I guess, Mr. White, go ahead.
Well, just a comment. Any gate or fence is restricted into the space between the vertical elements, and that particular space is designed to be too small for young children to get through. So any modification at the bottom would automatically be still safe for children, in my respect.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Sluice, so how would I proceed here? Do we need to bring this back before the commission?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, and Ryan, if you disagree, jump in, would be to have someone propose an amendment, not an amendment, but an additional condition, G, that the gate installed have the open space style pan all the way down through the gate.
I have verbiage if you'd like it.
Okay.
Condition G, the battens of the gate shall extend the entire vertical height of the gate. The battens are the small vertical columns, if you will. That's just the official term.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion to amend? Actually, Mr. McKnight, it looks like you have a question.
I'm just going back to the applicant, and I would say there are a couple of gates. I just was out on looking at Google Maps and looking at the gates down Mason, and you can look at the gate down across the street that I had referenced actually does have the bars going all the way to the bottom, and then the one which is not Town and Country property, but the one at Queenie Park also has a similar type of bars going down, doubling at the bottom, but still having the ability to visually see through the gate the entire way. So those are things that you might take a look at that I think are both very appealing gates that might fit your need as well from the applicant's point of view.
Mr. Malin-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are two additional gates north of the applicant on South Mason that are adjacent to each other that are also entirely open. One is where the pond is in the front yard, and the house adjacent to it also has a very open gate as other reference points. The other comment I was going to make is, Mr. Redlingshoffer, are you new to Town and Country?
Yes, I recently purchased this home in May.
Well, I'd like to echo what was said earlier, and that is certainly welcome to Town and Country. And a personal observation, and that is I compliment you, sir, on your willingness to consider the input of the commission and make an accommodation. I applaud that degree of sensitivity and flexibility.
Happy to be here and happy to accommodate as you all see fit. Thank you for your service.
Okay, any further discussion or amendments? Mr. McKnight.
like to propose an amendment to add condition G. Ryan, do you want to read that off again? That sounded pretty good to me.
The battens of the gate shall extend the entire vertical height of the gate.
If I could suggest,
Yeah, I'm not
Hold
sure.
on, Mr. McKnight still has the floor. Hold
I'm
on.
still thinking of that. So I would say that the gate shall be
You want me to move on to Mr. Bolazina?
Yeah, I'm
while
trying to
you
think of how to
about
word it,
that?
so
All
go
right,
ahead.
Mr. Bolazina, go ahead.
the suggested condition would be that the bottom half of the gate resemble the proposed top half of the gate and incorporate a batten and open design.
I'm gonna need you to read that for me again.
and I would, okay, go ahead.
Mr. McKnight, go ahead.
Could I make a suggestion, Dennis?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Bolazina, the gate
No,
would
I
provide
feel like I got to beat up on this a little more too.
yeah, I'm kind of going along the gate would provide a batten and open design throughout.
Perfect.
Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Or throughout
Laura,
the top and bottom portion. How's that?
Yeah, I'd just say throughout, and so we can just he can have a little flexibility as to whether he wants it more dense on the bottom or whatever, but that would give him some flexibility on it. But it would be condition G, the gate will provide would be designed to provide a batten and open space throughout.
Yeah.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bolazina. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion appears to carry unanimously. All right, we have an amended motion with new condition G. Any further discussion on item number 1, conditional use permit? Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Yes.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Mayor Reem,
Aye.
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
and Mr. McKnight.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Redling Schaefer.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Next 2 items on the agenda this evening pertain to a submittal for Delmar Dayspring Baptist Church. If there's no objection, we will request the applicant present all information pertaining to items 2 and 3 together, but we will vote on them separately as they appear on the agenda. Item number 2 is the amended site development plan. A request has been made by Paul Boyer of CEDC, applicant on behalf of Delmar Dayspring Baptist Church, owner, for approval of an amended site development plan in order to construct a pavilion on the property located at 1001 Municipal Center Drive in the Suburban Estate Zoning District. And item number 3 is a conditional use permit. A request has been made by Paul Boyer of CEDC, applicant on behalf of Delmar Dayspring Baptist Church, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit in order to construct a pavilion on property located at 1001 Municipal Center Drive in the Suburban Estate Zoning District. First matter before us, the commission this evening, is to decide if the proposed amendment is significant and if a public hearing is required. May I have a motion on that?
Move to make this a significant
Got a
request.
motion? Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Malin Smith. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes.
Mayor Reem,
Aye.
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
and Chairman Sima.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, since we've declared this matter significant, we will have a public hearing, and I now open the public hearing. Mr. Spencer, are there any exhibits?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff would like to enter the following exhibits into the record. 1, the municipal code. 2, the comprehensive plan. 3, the development office file as amended from time to time, including staff report titled amended final site development / conditional use permit, accessory structure pavilion, 1001 Municipal Center Drive. 4, amended final site development plan titled Site Development Plan, Dayspring Baptist Church Pavilion, dated 5/28/21, prepared by CEDC Civil Engineer Design Consultants, Inc. 5, a mailing list notice of public hearing, and 6, the notice of public hearing posted on the property and published in the St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. I'll call for our presenter. It looks like Mr. Boyer is on the Zoom with us. Please state your name and address for the record, if you would, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Boyer. I'm with Civil Engineering Design Consultants with an office at 10820 Sunset Office Drive, St. Louis 63127.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Presentation for us this evening?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm here on behalf, obviously, of Dayspring Baptist Church. The really two components of our proposal. One is the open air pavilion. The pavilion was gifted by the family of a longtime member. And they're proposing to locate it on the west side of the campus. And they had actually, the last time they had done a large size proposal before the city was in 2016. They did a 2-story addition on the north side of their existing building. And at that time, they were just below the threshold for MSD's requirements for stormwater quality and quantity. The original development was back in 97, and they had a detention basin at the northwest corner of the property. Well, MSD's requirements have changed since then. We were able to stay under the threshold in 2016. We were able to stay under the threshold for triggering the new detention basin and the stormwater quality requirements. But with the pavilion, as small as it is, with the pavilion improvements, MSD required us to bring the stormwater detention basin up to date. And so that's why you see the grading on the north side of the site. It looks like a lot of grading just for this small pavilion, but that's the reason why it's happening is it was triggered based on the improvements in 2016, 2017. So what we're proposing is basically an open air pavilion. It's 40 feet by 30 feet. Again, it was gifted. It'll have, it's 6 by 6 posts, and the pavilion's 18 feet tall, and we'll have lights in the ceiling and probably a couple ceiling fans. It's really for prayer groups, Bible study, staff meetings, that type of thing. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We had included some photos. It's basically 107 feet from the west property line where the closest residential properties are. And there's a significant tree line between us. So it's really just visible from the interior of the site.
Mr. Boyer, questions or discussion from the commission? Mr. McKnight.
2 questions for you. So I guess as you described this, first of all, the plans look I like the way they look. I like that as well. But I guess the question I had is, what you're saying is the addition of this pavilion will actually reduce the amount of stormwater coming off this property because you have tripped the level you need to build a larger detention pad.
Actually, yeah, that's true. It's true.
Okay.
So yeah, the improvements we're triggering, we're actually going to have a water quality basin and a detention basin. Yes, so the stormwater runoff will be reduced with these improvements.
Okay, that's good news in the plan in many ways, I guess. But the other one, I'm trying to imagine seeing something like this before, and I see that you have one from Lubbock, Texas. So I'm assuming they have some pretty high winds. But I'm looking at this and going, it seems kind of like a sail in some ways, that it could catch a lot of wind in a storm. And I'd hate to have this roof blowing onto someone's house. So Commissioner Bolazina brought this up before. I'm assuming that there will be plans that will be signed off by an engineer, and this will all be documented and safe in a storm. So I just want to confirm that that will be the case.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Further discussions or questions? Mr. Bolazino.
Well, when I see a pavilion like this, which is very nice, and it's for the gathering of a lot of people, and we've had these concerns, this concern that I'm going to tell you about on other properties, and that is there any intention by the owner of the Baptist church to have any amplified sound?
No, that's a good question. It's not going to be wired for that. The only thing that they're going to have are the lights and the fans in the ceiling. Now, I did ask them that because I assumed that question was going to be asked. They said if they ever did have a gathering, they would probably have portable amplifiers that they would come out and utilize that. I don't know if the city has objection to that or not, but there's nothing that's going to be wired in or hardwired in or amplified on that pavilion.
Well, I mean, whether it's temporary or permanent, I think the objection is the volume, right? So I don't know if a condition that said you couldn't have any permanent amplified sound amplification equipment. I mean, that could be a condition, but I don't know if it solves my problem. Yes, we do have noise ordinances, we have noise limits, but sometimes those aren't sufficient to capture what happens to adjacent residential property when those activities occur. So I don't have an answer. I'm just looking for suggestions for conditions that might keep the residents happy.
Perhaps a additional condition along the lines of to the CUP that there won't be any sound heard from neighboring properties, or no amplified sound at a level audible to the nearest residential property, something like that.
That would be pretty tough because, well, there is some background noise here because of the highway, but I think that would be a pretty low bar to hear anything. But I don't know. I'm fishing for some kind of restriction. I don't think our noise ordinance level would be sufficient to protect the neighbors from gathering. Of course, if they're infrequent, that's not a problem, but if they become more frequent, it can be a problem. And we have persistent problems with amplification from people that have sports events and the sound that comes from those speakers. So it's a concern. I don't know how to word it. I don't want to be obstructive to the ideas of what this church wants to do. I just am looking for some way to maybe keep our neighbors happy.
Mr.
Commissioner Bolazino, would a time restriction be interesting in this case? So you could say no amplified sound after a certain time of night. I'm just trying to think of what types of things we would be running into here.
Sure.
And you're referring to, Mr. Bolazina, from a permanently installed sound system or any sound system?
Well, yeah, I think whether it's permanent or portable, I think the problem is, I think you can generate just as much sound from portable equipment than you can from something that's hardwired into the pavilion. So, so the temporary or portable condition wouldn't solve the problem as I presented it. I don't know. Just looking for impression of the rest of the commission.
Further discussion? Ms. Lowell, we had any public comments to this matter?
We have received one public comment. It should have been distributed to the commission this evening. It was from the Moog School that sits just to the north of this property.
Thank you, Ms. Lowell. Further discussion? Okay.
And the condition that we talked about, Ryan, before in our meeting, that would come after a motion is on the table. Right.
Correct. All right, if there are no other public comments that have been received, I declare the public hearing closed. Further discussion and questions from the commission? Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the amended final site development plan with conditions as set forth in the staff report to the Board of Aldermen?
So moved.
Mr. McKnight, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Malin Smith. Mr. Bolzina, discussion or amendments?
I have a proposed addition to the conditions, and that would be a G, and that the modifications to the site as shown on the applicant's civil engineering drawing that installs a bioretention area shall receive approval by MSD prior to the application of any building permit for this pavilion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. White. Discussion on the proposed amendment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion appears to carry unanimously. All right, we have an amended motion. Any further discussion or amendments? All right, Ms. Slow, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bolzina,
Yes, since we didn't have any residents show up and there is a certain amount of background noise being near the highway, I'm gonna vote yes.
okay. Ms. Munzel,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Yes.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Mayor Reem.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank
Okay,
you.
agenda item 3, the conditional use permit itself. Is our motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit with conditions as set forth in the staff report to the Board of Aldermen?
I'll make the motion. Yes.
Mr. McKnight, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Munsell. Thank you. Discussion? All right, Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Mayor Reem,
Yes.
Mr. Bolzina.
Yes,
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, fourth item on our agenda tonight, a zoning text amendment. Amendments to the regulation of invasive species, specifically section 405.080 definitions, section 405.336 residential tree protection and removal standards, and section 410.200 standards and specifications. I'll call for our presenter. Assume that's you, Mr. Spencer.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Aldermen at their April 26th, 2021 meeting directed staff to investigate potential amendment, or directed the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to investigate potential amendments to the municipal code regarding prohibition of installation of invasive species. Staff proposes 3 amendments in an attempt to address this in the most straightforward, efficient manner. The first amendment would adjust the definition of plant units, which plant units are the groupings of plants that we require as part of new construction of homes, of commercial businesses, parking lots, buffer yards, to adjust the definition of plant units to state that plants listed as an invasive species by the Missouri Department of Conservation shall be prohibited. The second amendment would adjust the language in our residential tree protection and removal standards section so that the replacement of trees to fulfill obligations of tree preservation shall not include invasive species. So the staff is proposing to add the line, the trees listed as invasive species by the Missouri Department of Conservation shall be prohibited in the recommended tree list for replacement. And then finally, in our subdivision section under the landscaping subparagraph, to add the line, plants listed as invasive species by the Missouri Department of Conservation shall be prohibited from inclusion on any required landscape plan. It's staff's opinion that this will allow for the broadest capture of plant installation across our community, and is the best way to address potential installation of invasive species. This does not prohibit individual property owners from installing trees and plants on their existing property as they see fit. This is just when we have permitted items that come before us as P&Z or Board of Aldermen or staff, when there's required landscaping to be planted, it shall not include listed invasive species by the state of Missouri.
Mr. Spencer, any questions or discussion? Mr. Bolzino.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really of the content, because I think we agree that the content is fine. It's just that in your amendment summary, on paragraph number 1, numbered paragraph number 1, it doesn't mention subdivisions, and we are regulating construction of subdivisions. You have new buildings, buffer yards, and parking lots. But I think the regulation will also apply to subdivision planting, like around the entrance monument and that kind of stuff, as it goes in with the new construction.
It's number 3.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry.
Mr. McKnight.
As I said earlier in our earlier meeting, I just wanted to go on the record and say I think this is compliments to staff for, first of all, finding a really, I think a very effective way to get this into our code. And I think this should be in the code. So I really like the fact that we're adding it in here. So good job, Ryan, getting this going.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment to the Board of Aldermen?
Move to approve.
Motion by Dr. Amell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Mansell? Any further discussion on the motion? Mr. White?
I'd like to propose a small additional word in Amendment 2 to the original text. The second sentence to read, the following list of trees, comma, while not all inclusive, comma, shall be considered desirable by the town, etc., etc. So in other words, I propose to add the word all between not and inclusive.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second. Yeah, I'll
Second
second
by
that.
Alderman Whitmire.
There you go.
Discussion on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion appears to carry unanimously. All right, we have an amended motion. Further discussion on agenda item 4. Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. White,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes.
Dr. O'Mill,
Aye.
Mayor Reem,
Yes.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
and Ms. Munzel.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Lowell. I'll take a motion on the commission's findings regarding this zoning text amendment. Dr. O'Mell.
There is a public need for the proposed use. The proposed amendment and proposed use are in compliance with the adopted comprehensive plan. The property in question is suitable for the uses permitted under the proposed zoning. There are adequate public facilities such as sewer and water and other required public services. The public health, safety, and general welfare will not be damaged. The land values of adjoining properties will not be damaged. The adoption of a proposed amendment is in the public interest and is not solely for the interest of the applicant.
Thank you, Dr. O'Mell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. White. Any discussion? All right, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion appears to carry unanimously. Thank you, Dr. O'Mell. Other business, the election of officers. Mr. Spencer, what do we need here? We need a motion. Remind me, it's been a while.
I'm going to
Well,
defer.
somebody
this
has
back.
to make a
I second.
nomination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr.
Aye.
McKnight, you had your hand up.
Who'd you call on?
No,
Mr. McKnight had his,
I was just trying to make sure we were going in the order appropriate, and you had it correct. So I just
got
wanna
it.
make
All
sure.
right. All right, I need we need a motion then for a nomination.
So we're talking about the chairman.
Yes, chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. We need to do them individually or together.
We can
Well-
do them all together or individually. It's up to the commission.
Thank you. Mr.
Do them
McKnight.
individually.
Well, I would start out and say if Chairman Sema would not object to running again, I would love to see him doing this job another round. So I would
Yay.
nominate Rob Sema if he is willing to do it.
Yeah, happy to continue to serve.
I have a nomination for
Second.
vice chair.
Well, let's
All
do
right.
one at a time.
All right, seconded by Mr. White, I think I heard. Is that correct, Mr. White?
Correct.
All right, do we need a voice vote on this?
Yes, that's
All
fine.
right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously.
You've
All
done
right,
a bang up job. You've done.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Bolzino. Dr. O'Mell, for Vice Chair.
I would like to nominate Will for Vice Chairman.
All right, got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Malin Smith. Any discussion? So I guess I should ask you if you accept Mr. McKnight.
I would be happy to serve, but I'm taking it, Gary, that you are not interested in running another term as vice chairman.
Well, I've done all these positions and I think it's good to put some new people through. So I think you'd be a fine addition to that position.
Thank you. I'd be happy to serve if elected. So.
All right. Further discussion on Mr. McKnight as vice chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. McKnight.
Thank you. Don't get sick. Don't get sick, Rob. No vacations for you.
I was the vice chair. That was my deal with Ron. Was you're never allowed to miss a meeting.
Exactly.
All right, and I need a motion for secretary. Ms. Mansell.
I would like to nominate Commissioner White.
You have a nomination for Mr. White for secretary. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. O'Mell. Do you accept, Mr. White?
I'm very honored. Thank you.
I'll take that as a yes. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously. Congratulations. Okay. Item number 2 under other business, Planning and Zoning Commission rules and procedures. Mr. Spencer.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Board of Aldermen at their January 25th, 2021 meeting eliminated the city engineer position on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So staff is taking the initiative at this time to update our rules and procedures to reflect that. So we've updated the voting membership as part of the composition of our board. And then also it's staff's recommendation that we update the liaison position from revised from planning director to city planner, and to update the conflict of interest section to reflect the accurate location of the code of ethics within the municipal code. So those are the 3 minor changes that are being proposed to the rules and procedures of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mr. Spencer. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Bolzino.
Yeah, I kind of brought this up before in the session, and I guess I had some other thoughts about this. And I know Ryan is a city planner, but is the position that you fill, does the city of Town and Country require to hire someone that is, quote, a city planner? Because I think before we didn't have a city planner. We had a director of whatever they called it. So I don't want to place us in a position that says we have to have a real city planner in your position. That was my only concern.
Mr. Sluice?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think what happened is previously there'd been 2 separate departments. You had the Director of Public Works and the Director of Planning. And then I believe it was when Sharon Rothmore retired, those 2 departments were kind of consolidated into one. And after that, we had the position of city planner as opposed to, a director of planning. The good thing about these are, you as a commission are free to change them as things, as the situation and the processes change. So obviously that's one reason why you're doing it now, is to reflect the change in, to formally remove the city engineer. So, it's not as difficult or as, permanent, probably the wrong word, as an ordinance. It's the rules you follow as a guideline. So anything you do here won't require the city to hire a quote unquote city planner. Although I think the city will always have someone doing the function of the city planner, even if it's, if there's some other kind of restructuring where it's technically a different title.
I mean, I just didn't want to place the city in a bind of saying, well, we have to now have this position open and we have to call it a city planner, and then we have to have certain credentials, and maybe we want that, maybe we don't want that, who knows, but I'm glad we have one. I just don't know that, we're certainly not
So your
required.
point, Mr. Sluice, is that this is not an ordinance. This is just the Planning and Zoning Commission's internal procedures. And it seems like our internal procedures wouldn't obligate the city to hire someone of certain credentials.
If Mr. Bonazini, if it make, you could always add, or they could add after city planner, comma, or person fulfilling the duties of the city planner. I mean, obviously, someone's got to be doing that job, whether it's a different title. So I think that would cover it, and be clear if there is a change in job titles or things like that, or restructuring.
I like that suggestion very much.
Okay. Well, is there, why don't we get a motion on the table here, and then we can have further discussion, and that would provide the opportunity for Mr. Bolazina to amend it. Is there a motion to approve the roles and procedures?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Mr. Malin Smith. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Seconded by Mr. Bolazina. All right, further discussion, Mr. McKnight.
I guess one of the questions, and I know this has been the way it's been for years and years, where we've really never had a city engineer while I've been on the Planning and Zoning Commission, serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. But I'm looking at the number now, reducing the potential number from 11 to 10 and making it even technically harder to get to the quorum of 6. So I guess one of the questions I would have here is, and this could go to the Board of Aldermen, it could go to the mayor. Is there a possibility here to possibly add a 9th citizen member and make it so we have an additional member that could make it so we would reach quorum and not have quorum issues in the future? I don't know that that conflicts with city, the rules of city, the ordinances of the city and how it's designed in the city. But I wanted to bring that up as a possibility to consider if we're going to, instead of taking our number from 11 to 10, maybe converting that city engineer position into something else. And it doesn't need to be done today, but it could be a consideration moving forward, working with the city, if we do run into quorum issues in the future.
When's the last time we had a city engineer?
I don't remember. So
It was Skip Mange,
yeah,
a long time ago.
Yeah,
2001, I believe it was.
2001. But I don't think we, personally, I don't feel like we have quorum issues. We've, not in the last few years anyway.
Okay.
Question of
Malin Smith.
clarification.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Fred.
Thanks, Rob, Mr. Chairman. First, for clarification, has the position of city engineer been eliminated?
January 25th.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just being removed from the roster of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The position itself has been eliminated.
Yeah,
correct.
Okay. Second is, it's my recollection that an effort was made to make each of the commissions uniform in terms of their population. And so unless things have changed a bit, I believe there are 8 members to each commission. And I think the mayor and the board should consider whether or not they want to create an anomaly for this commission. I think uniformity is desirable.
Okay. Mr. Bolazina?
I mean, is a suggestion having 9 members instead of 10? Is that the suggestion?
It wasn't so much a suggestion. I was actually just bringing up the possibility of, would it make more sense to convert this 11th member from what it was a city engineer to a citizen member, it was not a proposal. It was just something to think about that we might miss in this. So something just to consider.
Mr. Chairman?
I guess I'm totally lost, but
I'm just asking a question, Dennis. So I wasn't proposing
Mr. Sluice?
Yeah. So the total number is set by the Board of Aldermen by ordinance. So there could, I believe the statute says you can have a maximum of 15 members, of which the mayor and then alderman. So I think that theoretically, I can't remember the city engineer is listed as one of those 15, but either way, I think you could have certainly up to 12 or 13 citizen members by statute, I believe. But right now, there are only 8 citizen members by ordinance. So it'd be something that rather than amending the rules and regulations, it would be, I think, maybe a suggestion to take to the board for them to consider whether they would like to add an additional one.
Ms. Lowell?
Just so the commission knows, the Board of Aldermen is having a retreat on the 23rd, and they are discussing commissions. So maybe that is something that Alderman Whitmire may want to bring up during that discussion.
Still what I was going to say.
All right, what's before us this evening, though, is 3 changes to the Rules and Procedures Amendment, or to the Rules and Procedures, and we have a motion that's been seconded, I believe. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Ream,
Yes.
Mr. White, Mr. Bolazina,
yes,
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
and Dr. Omo.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Report from the Board of Aldermen on action by the board. Alderman Whitmire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So according to my review of city records since April 21st of this year, all matters that were originally considered by Planning and Zoning Commission and recommended to the Board of Aldermen were approved unanimously. I will review those real quickly here just to refresh your memory. There are 6 of them. One was a pool located at 13715 Bellcrest Court. The next one was a detached garage and pool house at 13659 Mason Heights Road. Third one is the lacrosse practice field. The fourth was a time extension of 6 months for the submission of a record plat for the Greystone subdivision. And then lastly was an accessory structure to be located at 23 Brookwood Road. And lastly, I would just say that I am not aware of any matters that are being sent to the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration and action. That's my report. Any questions?
Questions of Alderman Whitmire. That's great. Oh, Mr. Bolazina, go ahead.
yeah. I just the one item tonight about the plans, which I understand, it's fine, and I don't want to step on the Board of Aldermen, but I try to understand what our function is, and that is a recommending body at the planning and zoning level, and whether the procedure should be that the Board of Aldermen can recommend an ordinance for us to consider, or should it come to P&Z first for discussion and then presentation to the Board of Aldermen, whether we have this forward or backward, or whether it makes any difference, or whether the Board of Aldermen should have the leeway to suggest whatever laws it wants to suggest, even those that affect our zoning ordinance. So I'm just asking for a clarification, maybe from our Mr. Sloot, whether things that affect the planning and zoning ordinances, whether those should come from this commission and not come from elsewhere.
So under there are a number of different changes. That's what that is. An amendment can come before you. One of them is the initiated amendment, and so whether that's suggestions from the board, suggestions from staff, it's that's one way it can get to the P&Z. So I think that's Ryan can probably speak more to it. How many of the times it's things that come out of subcommittees, or if it's things that come directly from the board that then he's tasked with making some suggestions or some updates, and then it comes to you as the first body to officially look at those revised regulations. But it's not uncommon, and it's pretty common for cities to initiate that process from the board level or from a staff level if they see a need.
Yeah, and the only difficulty we've had, and this is not one of those difficult situations, but the only difficulty that this commission has had is when a significant piece of legislation comes before this commission for recommendation, and it's the first time we have wind of it. And we tried to correct that by ordinance a few months ago on things that are changes to the zoning ordinance. I think need two meetings now. Actual changes to our text of the zoning ordinance, which I think is an important step, because we've had situations where our zoning ordinance was changed, and the first time we saw it was at one of these meetings. So again, this is supposed to be a deliberative, recommending body, and to the extent that we can fulfill that function, we need some opportunity to see what's before us. That's the only suggestion. And sometimes we get surprises, and I'm just trying to find ways to eliminate those surprises.
Further discussion or questions for Alderman Whitmire? Mr. McKnight.
I guess, Commissioner Bulazina, I'm trying to understand a little bit about your description, because it seems to me like there are, I feel like I understand where you're coming from, in that there are specific things that the Board of Aldermen may say, hey, we'd like someone to look at this. And instead of turning it over to staff, depending on just turning it over to staff, making it saying Planning and Zoning Commission, would you take this up as a discussion point and put it in? Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Well, yes, and sometimes that has occurred. Sometimes, Mayor Dalton had some ideas on his mind that he wanted us to explore. And we did set up a commission, or I'm not a commission, but a committee, within the commission that would take on certain things like the big changes to the sign code and the big changes to various sections of our code. And it was a suggestion from the board that we should take this up, and we formed a committee and we took it up. Like I'm saying, tonight's issue is not an issue, but I'm just saying there are sometimes significant issues that have been worked on by other people, and that the first time we see it is at one of these meetings, and we have not had the opportunity to have the kind of deliberative input that I think this commission was formed to provide. So I'm not degrading anybody else's efforts. I mean, all efforts are good. It's just that this commission has certain responsibilities, I believe, under its charter to be that deliberative body to make an appropriate recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. So I'm just trying to encourage that to happen.
If I could just add that I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's what we're going to try to do. I think that that task force for some issues serve a good purpose, but I also think that the use of task force sometimes doesn't end around the commissions. I want to be sure that the commissions themselves consider themselves to be vital and useful. And the last thing I want, and the last thing the Board of Aldermen wants, is for the people who work on a commission like the P and Z Commission to feel that, hey, we're really not integral and we're just here to rubber stamp or things like that. And that's not the approach that we're going to take. I don't really think that's been the approach in the past either, honestly, but I do think that we're going to be sure that things are brought to the P and Z or whatever commission with enough time to kind of analyze them and make recommendations. And again, like I said, I think we may use like subgroups within a commission, but I think I would like to avoid using task force in general, just so that the work is done by the commission itself. So that's where I come out on it. And I think your points are very valid.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mary. Mr. McKnight?
Just real quick, I would highly encourage it. I mean, I follow on with Dennis's comments, but I would say as you guys go off and have your offsites and these meetings that you have discussing the future, I would highly recommend you guys take a look at, are there changes or things that the zoning commission should look at, and give us a list of things you'd like us to be looking at, and kind of task us with work to do as part of that process. I think that's something that we would jump at as a commission to be able to do.
Thank you.
Careful what you ask for, Rich. Or will
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I believe that this commission is about, to take those ideas from the branches of our government and see if they fit, and to the extent that they fit in our zoning ordinance, that we should work on those. But we can't think of everything, and we have enough to do, but so we appreciate knowing at least what the pulse of the city is towards certain items, so that we can think about it and work on it.
Got it.
Okay. Mr. Spencer, I think you said that we're going to be in person next month. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
We're putting Zoom to bed, and we'll be live in the chambers. So I can have Laura send directions so you guys can find it.
In case you don't remember, it's been a while.
Yeah. It'll be unusual, but it'd be we'll like riding a bike, so we'll be.
It'll be good to see everyone in person. That's for sure.
Right.
Dr. O'Mell.
I'd like to make a request of the commission that the September 15th meeting, a request to consider it be a change because of a important religious holiday.
Okay. Mr. Spencer, maybe you can take a look at that and
we can work
propose,
on
see
that.
if we can find an alternate date.
I apologize, Dr. O'Mell. I try to stay on top
You
of the
beat me
calendar.
to it the last few years.
Yeah, I missed it this year. Sorry. We'll work on that.
Thank you, Dr. O'Mell. Good catch. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Raylan Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. We'll see you all in person next month at that, the building. Everybody remembers where it is.